If you're a founder in Germany, here's the brutal reality. Setting up a company still takes weeks, costs a fortune, and often ends with a fax. Yes, a fax to a notary. That's why Germany's the startup rate has sunk to its lowest point in a decade. Today, we're joined by Alexander Müller, Holvi's DACH country director, Felix Gerlach, Y Combinator-backed founder of LegalTech. Together, they're on a mission to break Germany's bureaucratic barrier to entrepreneurship. In this episode, we'll unpack how fintech and legal tech are rewriting the rules of company formation and what that means for the future of founders across Europe.
Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Let's start with our first guest, Alexander Müller. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Very good, very good. It's a pleasure being here.
He began his career at Accenture, helping financial institutions navigating digital transformation. From there, he joined Speed Invest, backing fintech startups across Europe and Southeast Asia. Later, he co-founded Friday Finance, which was acquired by Pliant in 2023. Today, as Holvi's country director for Germany, Austria, Alex leads one of Europe's pioneering neobanks for SMEs, combining business accounts, invoicing, and bookkeeping into one streamlined platform. Alongside him is Felix Gerlach. Hey, Felix, how you doing?
Hey, what's up?
One of Germany's most promising legal tech entrepreneurs, a Y Combinator alumnus, batch 2024, and Forbes 30 under 30 honoree, Felix previously co-founded Passbase, a digital identity startup acquired in 2023. Now, with his new company, LegalTech, he's tackling one of the most stubborn bottlenecks in the startup ecosystem, the notary process. By digitizing incorporations and making notary services accessible online, he's lowering barriers for founders across Europe. Together, Alex and Felix represent the future of business formation in Europe, bridging legal tech and fintech to create a seamless founder journey. Guys, welcome. This is going to be a good interview. Alex, let's start with you. Once upon a time, you were helping big banks as strategy consultant. Actually, I think we've been competitors at the time. What drew you into fintech for SME space?
Well, it's been quite a long journey, but at the end of the day, I think I really saw the problem from both sides. And now reflecting a bit about how SMBs are treated from the eyes from a financial service provider, from the big banks, it's really like the unwanted stepchild of the banking world. They're not really retail, because it's not the consumer, but they're also not commercial. Don't fall into the commercial banking area where big loans and big payment processing really plays a role. So I really bit stuck in the middle, and it's getting bounced around. And back at the time, early in my career, there was also when there was a ton of regulatory innovation or opportunity for regulatory innovation. PSD2 was just being ratified and rolled out. There was this open banking opportunity. And then when I switched to VC, I was at Speed Invest. I saw there's actually people that are really working on capitalizing on these opportunities. And from there on, I decided to double down and try to solve it myself or become a part in solving it. And that's why I ended up in the founding journey and later now at Holvi.
Felix, every founder has a spark. What was the one day moment when you realized Germany's notary system needing disruption? By the way, we're not actually attacking the notaries here, only the legal framework in which they need to operate, just to be clear.
Yeah, actually, it was a series of events. Being in the startup scene for the last 10 years and seeing different markets, basically, how to incorporate companies in Germany, as well as seeing startup scenes in London, Asia, as well as, of course, Silicon Valley, right? And I noticed, of course, there's a huge gap of how incorporations are done, how business transactions are done in different places, right? You can incorporate a company in UK for like £15. You can sign your Series A papers in US just with like a digital signature, and then you're coming back to Germany and seeing that like an incorporation takes up to like 4 weeks of time. And this is the big opportunity that we are seeing with Beglaubigt, and especially with the partnership with Holvi.
Germany's startup ecosystem has hit a 10-year low in incorporations. Why do you think the status quo persists despite widespread digitalization?
Well, I think there are like a couple of factors. I think the conditions somewhere else are way better than in Germany. Nowadays, I think the smartest builders and entrepreneurs are moving abroad. They are incorporating their Inc. or LLC somewhere else in order to raise faster capital, in order to attract faster talent, and being faster to the market. And this is like, unfortunately, like a negative trend. And basically we are here to disrupt this trend and bring it to the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Alex, what's the biggest hidden challenge for SMEs facing in opening a business bank account in Germany today? I vividly remember the days when I was an apprentice at the bank, learning what amount of paperwork, like physical paperwork back in the days, you really needed for opening such an account.
Yes, I think if we talk about the commoditized business bank account, an established company, then maybe we have done a good chunk of work in the past 10 years to tear down the barriers to open a business bank account. But now imagine you're a first-time founder. You never incorporated before. And you're like, okay, I'm going to incorporate and get my registration. I start building my business model, and then suddenly you're faced with, I need to do my share deposit, my share capital deposit. I need to do my commercial registry integration. And suddenly you realize to get your company registered, you need to prove that you deposited your share capital into a bank account. But in order to get a bank account, you need to be registered as a company. And you really have this chicken and egg problem. And luckily, there are solutions nowadays. And a big bank, even until today, they would still be very heavily paper-based and sometimes costly to solve this chicken and egg problem. And we've been working a lot over the past few years to tear down these barriers as well and make it as seamless, as digital first, as unbureaucratic as possible. And this is also where Felix and me have been building this partnership to make it much, much easier for founders. That being said, it's not a table stakes today, and it's a pretty new product, and many founders still face this challenge in opening their first business account.
I remember that at one point banks accepted photocopies, but then you had to have a stamp, an official seal on it that was really the photocopy of something. So there was really a lot of admin work there. Felix, you built a legal tech in one of the most regulated, lobby-heavy industries. What kind of resistance have you faced from the Association of Notaries, in German called Notarkammer?
Yeah, very good question. I think it's very important to understand that we are not working against notaries and the Chamber of Notaries, but with them. Our goal is basically to enhance their processes and digitize the journey of a founder, and making also the life for notaries easier. I think it's very important that we still center the most important part of the notary, like the seal, the trust seal at the very end in the process, but basically focusing our work of digitizing and enhancing their processes before an incorporation and also afterwards. And this is very important as this is like an unsolved triangle between the founder, notaries, registries, as well as banks, right? And we are now here basically to solve this with technology and innovation. Of course, we know that Germany and like the government parts are like still very slow in order to understand how innovation can impact also like the economy. But basically, in order to stay competitive with Germany, we need to move the needle, and we need to bring, especially to the most regulated parts, innovation.
Mm-hmm. Both of you. I was wondering, Germany is often criticized for bureaucracy killing innovation. From your perspective, what is like the real root cause of that? Law, politics, or culture? Because what I always have in mind is the saying "draußen nur Kännchen." That means, for example, a cafe has a rule: if you sit outside, you can have a mug of coffee. You have to order the big expensive port, and they just stick to the rule and they repeat it as often as you ask them. So is that culture piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, very good question. I think Germany is deeply rooted in bureaucracy. I think we are like a paper-first country. Every process, basically, we need to fill out forms, and it's still hard to innovate as like the governmental bodies, like they have blown up. Like this is like the biggest employer in Germany. And basically, the government basically is trying to fence around like outdated systems. The problem is, as I said, like we are slowly losing the race in terms of like international competition, right? In terms of innovation takes place somewhere else and not anymore in Germany. And I think something dramatic needs to change in the processes in order to foster innovation again. And this is why I'm so excited about like a partnership between like a neobank and us, and also like innovative notaries, in order to solve that, in order to enable faster business transactions in Germany, from incorporations to like the most critical business transactions. And like one partner is basically unable to solve the puzzle. So therefore, it's very important to partner up with like big players in the market who have like the right understanding why this is important, and a wide understanding of the mission and vision that we face together.
Mm-hmm. Alex, do you want to add something?
First of all, I really agree with what Felix says, that there is like all of the stakeholders have their individual part to play. When thinking about how did we get to this point where we are today, that we are like paper first as a company or as a country. I think we've done a great job in optimizing our processes. The problem is that these processes are still decades old and aren't really ready for what is the 21st century, or what is nowadays a possibility. And I think this really is deeply rooted in our culture, and also partially fragmented political responsibility. Culturally, we are super risk averse, right? Ask our parents. Many of them will tell you, "Oh, I'd rather not take a loan. Taking credit is bad. Only what I have for myself, that is what's good." So it's this risk aversion that we grew up with, and this risk aversion has also been codified into regulations and law. So it's really on us, like the next generation of builders and founders, to break out of this very, very actively. And from a banking perspective, I can say anyone who ever worked with compliance, it's much, much harder breaking up a rule than setting it up in the first place. So this is very, very active work we need to do, and always keep in mind that we do this to make things more innovative, smooth, but also safer down the line.
Mm-hmm. For our audience, Felix, you once said the biggest hurdle isn't tech, it's psychology. You'll share a story where bureaucracy almost broke a founder's dream, and how LegalTech changed that outcome in our founder's vault. Alex, Holvi has been around since 2011. What pivots did Holvi to survive in a fiercely competitive neobanking market?
Yeah, I think the first pivot is already quite a few years ago, and this is really going away from just being this basic business account with access to a MasterCard or Visa card, right? That was the innovative product in the late 2010s. And with something like a digital account opening, we really could achieve that scale. And back at the time, it was so interesting. Our biggest competitors were the large incumbent banks. Now, fast forward another 5, 6, 7 years. Today, it's completely different. Today, our competitors aren't the large incumbent banks anymore, but it's all the other digital players, the business banking players, which are also hitting the market and trying to increase the market share. And this is where, for us, it was also very clear to not just expand the product beyond an account and card where we integrate with partners, for example, or build our own ancillary products, but we also need to expand the market segments that we address. Historically, Holvi was mostly focusing on sole entrepreneurs and freelancers. Nowadays, more than half of our customer base are SMBs, incorporated companies. And the crux, what's really most imperative for us, was always to keep focus while expanding. If you're not keeping focus, for us, that meant really being picky about the type of customers we want to expand with. Because every customer will then bring back requirements like expectations, and you need to suit it to them. Otherwise, you're not building a product that satisfies everyone's needs. And that focus, that prioritization was really key when doing our pivots or expansions in the course of our company's history.
Mm-hmm. Felix, I'm curious, how did your past-based exit shape the way you're right now building LegalTech?
Very interesting question. I think LegalTech is now like a completely different company. How we built basically PassBase back then. With PassBase, we raised more than 20 million USD towards Series B, and hired as fast as we could. And after basically selling the company to a US competitor, we sat down, my co-founder and me sat down and said, okay, what is actually the truth of entrepreneurship? And what do we want to solve actually? And our take was that it's all about what kind of value can you bring to the market and to your users, and not how much money you can raise or how fast you can grow in terms of employees. So we started basically LegalTech.de, like OpenLaw, the company behind, with the mission of like building a product that brings value to the market and building a product and company that is super healthy from day one. So therefore, we started bootstrapping LegalTech for more than 1.5 years to actually find a product that brings value to the market before we actually try to onboard external money to leverage our efforts. And nowadays we are standing with a very healthy company. We gathered like the most talented designers, engineers, and operators around us in order to be mission centric and not like VC centric. And we care a lot about our users. Our users are founders and SMEs and small business owners that want to do business faster in Germany, and we enable them to digitize many processes that were stuck in the past.
Interesting observation. I've heard this line of thought. Some call it startup centric, some call it customer centric, versus VC centric quite a lot, this year. I think that's new train of thought going through the minds of entrepreneurs here in Germany. Alex, Holvi integrates banking, investment, invoicing, and bookkeeping. Actually, that piece is no fun, and I appreciate everybody who helps with that. What's your playbook for making these tools usable for non-finance savvy founders, and everybody who did in Germany a VAT filing can understand that you need quite some knowledge to just do that right.
Yeah, I'm also coming back to this customer centricity and VC centricity in a second. I think to your question right now, on paper, our playbook is really simple. We use that little bit of Nordic mentality that we have. As you know, Holvi has Finnish roots, and the design philosophy that really says things just need to work. At the end of the day, that's the most important. You get a business account, you get a card, you get financial admin tooling, it just needs to work. It's as simple as that. And in order to make this work, you really need to hammer down on the customer centricity. And what I've learned over the year, it's not just a platitude that people say in podcasts. The previous company that we built was definitely a bit more VC centric, and we did a lot of polishing to make the journey look good on paper. But what really matters is that you sit down and focus on customer centricity. This is easier said than it's done, though. For me, this means even though I'm like now in the management team and we're looking at a big market and tens of thousands of customers, I'm sitting in customer calls every single day. And that's an effort that everyone needs to put in. So if anyone says I'm customer centric, well, then I'd also want to hear, okay, does this reflect in your daily operational work? Because you can't build great product from an ivory tower. You need to experience the complexity your customers, or in this case, my customer, have really in person. And so I guess the philosophy is really simple. We handle the numbers so the founders can focus on the business.
Alex, I really appreciate this attitude going into customer conversations every day. I've realized if executives do that, it's much easier to keep customer centric, because if you are not in daily touch with the customer, it's very much easier to make unpopular decisions with your customers, right?
It's never easy to listen to a customer that's not happy with you, because at the end of the day, when founders that build their own business, it's also a bit of a reflection of themselves. I mean, that's very natural and hopefully not a surprise. And then if someone says, hey, I'm really not happy with that, letting that go and not being disassociating from that so that you can really focus on making the product better. It's tough. I understand everyone that wants to take a day off of facing the trenches.
Felix and Alex, can you both walk us through the ideal founder journey in 2025 from company incorporation to sending out the first invoice, if everything works as you guys have envisioned it?
Right. I think it's very important to start first about like the status quo in the market. As I mentioned, I think it took before like those major partnerships like 3 to 4 weeks actually to incorporate a company. You have to get sorted your documents. You have to get organized like a notary appointment. You have to find like a banking partner basically to deposit your share capital, as well as going back to the notary again and doing like the registration for the official commercial register, and again waiting for the official filing and bringing back the documents to the bank. Right. It was a huge pain. It took up to like 4 to 6 weeks actually to get it done as a founder. And this is actually not the main job of a founder, right? The founder needs to focus on its business, right? Especially in the inception, in the first weeks and month, you need to focus on your business, find users, and not focusing your daily thoughts and work on like how to incorporate and what are now the next steps. And zooming out now on like the perfect user journey for like a founder is actually you should spend maximum like 1 or 2% of your work efforts on like the admin work, on the admin side of like how to incorporate, right? And how does it work or should work is like you basically incorporate online, fully online. All paperwork is done online, and it's sorted out within 24 hours, right? And you can start focusing on your business and not the admin work. And behind all the processes should be done in terms of like having like a bank account, registration for your company, and all parts also that follows afterwards in terms of Gewerbeanmeldung, tax ID, registration for the transparency register. Like the job is not done there, filing for the company. But the optimal user journey is that should be done within 24 hours and everything should be done within a few clicks.
Yeah, I really agree with that. It needs to get to a point where it's completely digital, really end to end. We know today there's just technically some parts that can't be fully digitized, like the registration to the commercial registry. This needs to go by paper. The invoice is sent to the service address of service, and that's in the regulators that's in the regulator's hand to digitize this process. But when it comes to actually, for example, initiating the notary process, this is where we can really put this digital layer on top and make it much, much easier for founders. And that's, for example, at Holvi, we wanted to have this. We wanted to help those founders to go to the notary in person or digitally. And for us, that was why the decision came from to partner with LegalTech, because they have built this network with the notaries to make digital incorporations happen.
We have around 50,000 listeners to this episode when it goes onto radio, podcast, and YouTube. So I was wondering, all those founders out there listening, what was your hardest step in incorporating your company? Drop us a comment. Felix, Y Combinator is famous for 0 to 1 scaling. What was the hardest Y Combinator lesson you applied to LegalTech.de?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons for us is like ruthless focus, right? Of course, in our DNA of open law is basically to bring insta legal to the world and fixing like the legal system, right? But of course, this is like a very bold and big vision, and we need to strip it down and focus it down to like actually like the first core problems. And this is for us like Germany, and actually fixing one big piece of it with like the notary system and how incorporations and notarizations are done. And this is one of the hard lessons you learn by focusing on like one single market, focusing on your customers and trim it down to like very explicit use cases.
Awesome. Guys, we will be back after a short ad break where we'll unpack the strategy that changed everything for Holvi and LegalTech.de and why this might finally end Germany's startup winter. Guys, thanks for sticking with us. We are back from a little ad break and going straight to Alex. Alex, what growth methodology has worked best in bringing Holvi deeper into the German SME market? I'm sure there's a lot of bank executives now listening with very, very open ears.
Yeah, I think those that know Holvi, especially back in the time of the late 2010s, know of the scaling journey, right? At the time, we had 250,000 customers or something like that in Germany. And back at the time, the playbook was pretty simple. You do a product-led growth, kind of motion where you have the digital account onboarding and the verifications went pretty quick. And then you really crack the performance marketing game. You need to be listed. You need to be top of the page, stuff like that. That worked back at a time, 5-6 years ago. If you try this today, maybe your success isn't as predetermined anymore, because customer expectations and the sophistication has risen so much, and also the offerings across the competitive landscape. And so our strategy isn't just about acquiring customers anymore. It's really about becoming a native part of the founder ecosystem. And one example of that is in B2B banking in Germany. That means you have to really commit. You need to become a German product, speak the German language, be regulated under the German regulator, the BaFin, have German IBANs, and integrate with the tools that founders use here. One of these examples is you need to integrate with Datev if you're an SMB, or Servidesk and LexOffice. Those are all the local accounting softwares. If you don't do this anymore today, no accountant will come up and say, hey, Holvi is a good product, because you're also making their life a bit harder. And the founders will say, hey, I'm already used to those integrations in my ecosystem. Why is that not here? And this is really what is for us the key point under committing to the local market. And that was on the accounting side. Nowadays, we even go one step further and partner with LegalTech, like Felix and Big Laubit, because we think we also need to be there at the moment when a business is born. And we know today we have the tools and the distribution to make this technology accessible to a broader base of founders.
We may add, for everybody who's not from Germany, Datev is like the central communications hub for all tax data. We don't go into detail. I just want to add here from a personal perspective that the user experience has quite a long way to go. But I was curious, Alex, I have one question when you were answering mine. I was wondering, you were talking about top of the page Google times. I personally feel, without any confirming data, that changing to AI search away from Google has a big importance for founders or potential founders. Would you confirm that, like from a gut feeling?
So there's a lot of moving pieces, but let me give you a few data pieces for you to make your own picture at the end. Our paid performance pipeline has plummeted in the last year, but we have doubled our pipeline. So the way we acquire organically has really skyrocketed. On the second hand, we don't yet see a lot of traffic coming from AI. That also reconciles with global traffic in AI. There is some, and it's growing, and obviously we look at trends, but it's not yet enough to really make a foundational impact. That being said, of course, we are all over to optimize for AI, to have the large language models understand that we are one of the notable players out there. It's about future-proofing ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Felix, how do you make strategic decisions in a space where regulation can change overnight?
Yeah, very interesting question. I think it's also here important to understand that our users are not only like the founders and SMEs, but also like the notaries and regulatory bodies. So we want to find solutions with them and not against them. And by doing so, we have actually the chance to bring innovation to the market and foster actually faster business transactions. On the other side, of course, the incorporation is only like a tiny piece of the whole user journey of founders, right? As I mentioned, there are like a couple of other components that are very, very interesting to us to solve for founders. As I mentioned, tax ID, transparency register, accounting is coming next, right? And all those pieces need to be solved in order to reduce like the admin work for founders. So basically we are building along the user journey to not just set on like one piece, the incorporation piece, because of course, regulation can change overnight, but also on the upside, basically. And we are ready for that and working with notaries and not against them.
Actually, I do understand taking their perspective. They do have a very boring job, mostly crafting contracts. Then sitting there, you have to read the whole contract, then you confirm everybody is there, everybody has the passports with them, and then you sign it, you put your official seal it, and that's it. So I do understand they also have an interest in making this faster and more technological than it is right now in still many offices out there. Alex, can you share a customer story where Holvi's tools made the difference between a founder surviving or maybe even shutting down?
Yeah, I met this founder entrepreneur last year at a networking event with the House of Finance and Tech in Berlin. And he told me his entrepreneurial journey, and it dates back to the beginnings of COVID. He was starting to build up an education platform to help students find a job. And then when COVID came around, he was in the process of setting up his bank account. And from one day to the other, all of this became exponentially harder, going to the branch, filling out the forms. And this in a time where you go through all the for this rocky time where you set up the business in the first place. And this is where Holvi came in. And with the digital account opening, getting the IBAN just within the day, and being able to issue your first Apple Pay MasterCard. That really made all the difference for him. And listening to these stories, that also makes your own work feel quite meaningful.
I have a question for both of you, and I do believe I already know the answer. Scaling challenges. What is harder, on the one hand, to have founders convinced to adopt digital, or convincing the regulators to really allow that?
I mean, I'm picking up right on this with this story. Right, the founder was screaming for a digital tool. I think the balance isn't even close. It's convincing regulators is infinitely harder to adopt digital tools than founders. Regulators at this point are still whispering about the risks, and the bottleneck really isn't about adoption; it's about permission.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. The biggest challenge is actually that regulators understand the power of innovation in the startup ecosystem, right? And startups shouldn't be treated as just like an afterthought, but more like an infrastructure piece of our economy. And this starts with like the incorporation and digital notarization per se. But of course, it takes time, especially in Germany. We are a huge country. More than 83 million people are living there. So it's not that easy to change, the law overnight. Even though we already know that the system is fully outdated. I think we need, bold visionaries that actually pinpoint the problems. We need, strong partners. And yeah, I think that there is a world and a scenario in the next 5 years where we see that also regulators are open to change and foster innovation.
I like the point that you're making here, because we're somewhere 83, 85 million people here living in Germany. And the thing is, you then can calculate that whatever you do in changes to regulation, make it more digital and so on and so forth, you always need thousands of state employees to pull along to understand and to adopt this as well. That's pretty tough to call. Alex has been at Speed Invest, built Friday Finance, and now manages Holvi. We will talk about his tactical playbook in the Founders Vote join down here in the show notes. So, Felix, in 5 years, will Germany finally have a fully digital incorporation, or are we still stuck with the fax machines? By the way, do you guys have a fax machine at beglaubigt.de?
Luckily not. We are digital first. So the good news are that we are already supporting digital notarizations in corporations, right? But this is only like a tiny fraction, as there are like other requirements tied to that, right? We like our founders need to have like the EID, and it's not common use. Like only like a very tiny fraction of our founders actually have those EIDs, and hopefully we see more adoption over the next 5 years, that this move up the needle, and the full incorporation process can be done for the broad mass. And of course, like fax machines, I think the next generation hopefully only remembers like the little icon and the emojis, and not anymore like the machine per se.
Actually, I have in mind, my oldest son is now 6 years old. And one time I'll put him in front of a dial phone. Let's see how that works. Alex, what don't get me wrong, I know predictions are always difficult, especially concerning the future, but what industry predictions do you have for SME banking for all of Europe, like looking down the road for 2030?
Yeah, let me answer this question in two parts. First, I want to piggyback on something that Felix said with the adoption of EIDs, which is a necessity for, at this point, verifying your identity or even go to a digital notary. One of the prediction will be that the proportion of people having EID will be nearly conclusive across the German population. That's also a bit of an optimism speaking here. When we introduced EID or online ID, online Personalausweis in German, a year ago, the average adoption was at 9%. I'm tracking every week how many Holvi customers verify themselves with EID. Now we are already at a stable rate above 30%. So this is something that is increasing more and more. And having this online identity, at least for natural persons, opens so many opportunities for digitization down the line, like incorporating your company. So this is the first prediction. Adoption of EID will continue to rise, and I think that's a very, very good thing. And I think on the business banking side, I think that by 2030, the business bank will withdraw more and more to the background. It will be all about AI co-pilots to CFOs that support the human in the loop, or the CFO to do the work better. The banking part is obviously the regulated part, but it will be the transactions that are running in the background where value is built on top of it.
Mm-hmm. You guys have both seen a lot, so I was wondering, what's a contrarian view you hold about the German startup ecosystem that most people would disagree with?
Yeah, maybe I do start. I think that, or like my contrarian view is that the startup ecosystem is not startup friendly in Germany. And this is, of course, why this partnership exists between Holvi and beglaubigt, to move actually the needle and enable faster incorporations so that founders can focus back on their business. Again, what we are seeing is that the smartest builders, they are moving abroad. They are not anymore incorporating in Germany. Why is that? It's just distracting and very hard to raise capital here in Germany. And something massively needs to change in order to attract back the talent. Currently, we're losing those talents. And this contrarian view, of course, I hope more and more people see the need, more and more partners see the need, in order to enable back like the small pieces of our economy, and this is the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, maybe I have a bit of a contrarian view to what Felix just said. I also see, of course, what you're saying. And the common view is that the German bureaucracy kills startup. But I'm a helpless optimist. So I'm also trying to find the good in it. And at the end of the day, the founders who built here, who found here, who embrace that, they're also very, very battle tested from day one. And I think they are well set up to build fundamentally solid businesses. And right now in the media, N8N, the AI automation platform, is all over the news, right? And their founder, Jan, first name I remember, I think he's an outspoken proponent of keeping his legal setups and legal companies in Germany, and something that I respect quite a bit. And if there's an opportunity to help more founders do that and simplify it, then I want to double down on any of these opportunities. And I think that's also where Felix and I then I back in agreement.
From our audience, I would like to know if you could fix one bureaucratic hurdle tomorrow, which would it be? Let us know. And I would bet somewhere taxes are there on top. Felix, we coming close to the end. What advice do you give first-time founders facing Germany's red tape today?
Very good question. I think founders should focus on their business first and not on the admin work, which means like first-time founders should delegate and outsource as much as possible on the admin side in order to focus on like their momentum on the first month, right? A founder has like maximum like 12 months of run rate of starting a business, and this is the most precious time for founders. And this is why we are here with Beglaubigt, Holvi and Co. in order to accelerate the process for incorporations, for banking, for accounting and so on, in order that our founders can focus on their business.
Alex, what's the boldest prediction you'd make about the future of entrepreneurship in all of Europe? We already heard your vision for SME banking, 2030 digital banking. Let us share your vision for the future of entrepreneurship in all of Europe.
Yeah, actually, I'm not really one to make predictions, but I certainly do have hopes for the future. And I think where Europe is really uniquely placed is to become this global center for purpose-driven entrepreneurship. I was really inspired by Felix just a few minutes earlier when he said, first we bootstrapped. We try to find our solid business model, something that we really believe in scaling up. And then we look for external investors to scale this up. I think this is the very right thing to do. And it's this type of quality of a business that I see Europe well positioned to produce. But in order to do this, I also think we really need to focus on standardizing legal company setups across the EU. And right now there is the EU Inc., EU Incorporated initiative going on, the 28th regime that they call, and everyone who's heard of that, who hasn't put in their votes and their feedback, I think this is something that we really can drive together as founders, operators, as a startup industry or tech industry, to make this vision come true.
Mm-hmm. For both of you, I do have one of our usual closing questions. Are you currently looking for talented people?
So maybe I start, of course, always, as like a founder, this is like, one of your top priorities to bring in top talent and the most talented, people around you, that share the same vision as you have. So, clear answer, yes.
Yes, we'll link Beglaubigt.de down here in the show notes. And if Alex also agrees, we also have the link to their career website down here in the show notes. Am I right to assume that, Alex?
Absolutely. We're hiring in Berlin, Helsinki, and Vienna. It's a company with a really strong and comfortable Nordic culture. And anyone can obviously also contact me on LinkedIn to inquire for more job opportunities.
And also, I've heard the quality of life in Helsinki is pretty good, but also you should bring warm socks for the winter.
That is true. There's this, everyone knows Slush as this global conference, and Slush, I think, especially in autumn and early winter, is a bit of a way of life. So yes, bring warm socks and sturdy shoes.
Yeah. And Felix, I was wondering, are you open to talk to new investors?
Yeah, so we are in the lucky position that we don't need to raise external money. Again, like core focus for us is to build like a healthy business and continue with that. So yeah, currently no need for new investors.
Guys, thank you very much. It was such a pleasure having you here. For the people, there will be month between the publication of this one and the Entrepreneurs Vault, but nonetheless, we are now dropping off to record the Entrepreneurs Vault. Link down here in the show notes. Guys, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks so much for the interview.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.